For so many people, therapy is a lifeline. It's absolutely crucial. But what happens when the very thing that's supposed to heal you ends up hurting you? Well, all across the internet, communities are popping up where thousands of people are sharing these exact stories. They're creating a space to say, hey, this happened to me too, and to start demanding some real change. Okay, let's get into this.
I mean, that's the kind of raw, just gut-wrenching feeling you find in these communities. This isn't just about having a bad session or not clicking with your therapist. We're talking about a deep, profound sense of betrayal from people who went looking for help and felt they got the exact opposite. So, what do these harmful experiences actually look like? Well, if you look at the stories being shared in places like the subreddit Reddit abuse, you start to see some really clear and disturbing patterns.
And that quote, it's even more powerful when you hear the story behind it. This person explained that their therapist really pushed them to dig into some deep, painful trauma. But then that same therapist would constantly reschedule or even double book their appointments. Imagine that. It's like having a wound surgically opened and then just being left on the table.
And this really gets to a core theme in so many of these stories. This feeling that your time, your emotions, your vulnerability, it just isn't being respected. That relationship, which is supposed to be built on a foundation of trust, starts to feel totally careless, and it can send you into a real spiral.
Here's another really tough example. This user, someone with a history of severe abuse, was asked to basically put themselves in their abuser's shoes. I mean, instead of feeling heard and validated, they just felt re-traumatized. It's like their own pain was being brushed aside for some kind of intellectual exercise.
And this isn't some isolated incident. Not at all. A complaint you see over and over again is about these therapeutic approaches that, whether they mean to or not, just completely invalidate a person's experience. It's a fundamental misread of what a client needs, and it can leave them feeling way worse than when they started.
So, look, these aren't just one-off bad days. The community has documented a really clear pattern of harm. And it ranges from these subtle, corrosive things like a condescending attitude, all the way to really serious ethical breaches. When you see it all laid out like this, it paints a pretty troubling picture of a system where the quality of care can be, well, dangerously inconsistent.
So what's going on here? Is it just a few bad therapists? According to a lot of these users, the answer is a hard no. They argue that these experiences are actually symptoms of a much deeper, more systemic problem, the power imbalance that's just baked into the whole therapeutic relationship. So, for example, one user talked about how their totally normal reaction to an abusive home, arguing with their parents, wasn't seen as a symptom of their environment. Nope. Instead, it was turned into a diagnosis, a disorder, basically shifting all the blame onto them.
And this user really connects the dots, right? When the parents are the ones footing the bill, it creates what feels like a massive conflict of interest. The therapist might be more likely to side with the parents, and that leaves the kid feeling totally powerless in the one place that's supposed to be helping them.
But it goes even beyond the power dynamic inside the therapy room. The community also points to a much broader issue in society, a perceived disconnect in class and just basic life experience between therapists and a lot of their clients.
The argument here is that therapy can sometimes treat problems as individual failings when they're actually caused by the system. Someone might be depressed not because their brain chemistry is off, but because they're working 3 jobs and still can't afford rent.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs is actually a great way to picture this. The argument is that a lot of therapists, maybe coming from backgrounds where those bottom rungs, food, safety, housing, were always secure, are operating up here, at the top levels, and they might really struggle to help someone whose foundational needs just aren't being met. And this disconnect leads to another huge frustration. Users say that when they're honest about their difficult situations, their realism gets dismissed. It gets relabeled by therapists as a negative scarcity mindset, something that's wrong with their thinking that needs to be fixed, instead of just a rational response to their reality.
Now, this feeling, this disconnect between a client's reality and how a therapist sees it, it's not just an anecdotal thing. Members of this community actually point to research that suggests there might be a hubris problem in the field itself.
So how good are therapists, really? Well, according to some research shared by the community, the answer totally depends on who you ask. And when you ask therapists to rate themselves, you get a fascinating and, frankly, a statistically impossible picture. Check this out. One study that a user cited found that the average therapist rated their own skills at the 80th percentile compared to their peers, and a full quarter of them rated themselves in the top 10%. Now, I'm no mathematician, but that's just not possible. It suggests a huge overestimation of their own effectiveness.
And this overconfidence might have some really serious consequences. Another study found that while about 8% of clients actually got worse during treatment, therapists predicted this would happen in only 0.01% of cases. That's a massive blind spot when it comes to seeing when their own clients are struggling.
But here's the twist. The research also suggests that a little humility goes a long, long way. Therapists who showed some professional self-doubt, who are open to the idea that they might be wrong, they actually had better client outcomes. It seems like overconfidence might not be a good thing in this field.
So after hearing all of this, what's the point of these communities? Well, it's not just about venting. It's really about channeling that pain and frustration into a search for accountability, for reform, and for new ways to actually heal.
And this isn't just talk, it's being turned into real, concrete action. As you can see, people are trying everything, working within the system by filing complaints, raising awareness through their own podcasts and writing, and even creating change from the inside. Some are so inspired they're going into the field themselves, determined to be the kind of therapist they so desperately needed but never found.
So at the end of the day, you have to understand, the criticism you see in these spaces, it's not an anti-therapy movement. It's not anti-help. At its heart, it's a powerful, user-led demand for a mental health care system that is more effective, more humble, and just fundamentally more accountable to the people it's supposed to serve.
And it all leaves us with a really critical question. When the very system that's designed to heal ends up causing this much harm, who's responsible for fixing it? The professionals? The institutions? Or is it the survivors, the ones who are bravely speaking out and demanding something better?